Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. Jealousy, a very difficult emotion, particularly if we're trying to find peace of mind and happiness in our lives right now. Creating jealousy in our heart isn't going to get us there very quickly. A matter of fact, jealousy is one of those emotions, one of those interactions that we have with life that really can keep us from truly living well. Well, what is jealousy? Jealousy has two parts to it. The first one is a thought that someone else has something that I want, has something that I don't have, and I want it, and I think if I have it, I will be happier. And so that sense of lack, that sense of desire creates sadness, creates envy, creates dis-ease inside our hearts, so we suffer. It's a very insidious and complicated emotion because it can come up in so many different ways. We can be driving in our car and someone pulls up alongside of us and we think, their car is a lot nicer than mine. How come they're so lucky? What's wrong with me? Or we can walk into a store and see someone who is so much better looking than we are and feel less than and wishing again we were different. And perhaps the biggest feeder of jealousy is social media. We just casually get on our sites, seeing what other people are doing, and we see that they're doing a lot more than we are. Perhaps they've purchased something, perhaps they've gotten something, perhaps they're doing something, but things that we aren't doing, and we feel jealous because they have more than we do, and we want that. It can make us feel less than. It can make us feel anger. It can create so many different feelings inside of us that in many ways it can be overwhelming and probably one of the leading factors contributing to our unhappiness in our lives. Not the only one, but it can definitely be one of the major ones. And one of the factors that makes jealousy so difficult is no matter what we do, what we accomplish, how good we look, how many things we have, where we travel in the world, if we get into the comparison game, we're going to lose because there's always someone that does better than us in any arena, period. Even if we make it to the very top, then the question is, how long will we stay there? I have learned working with so many people over the years that have had success unimaginable that it really doesn't matter. Almost everyone is always looking up at someone above them, and there's always someone above them. So if we compare, we will lose, and jealousy will kick in, wishing we had more, wishing we had better. We just can't win in the jealousy game. So today I want to talk about how not to play the jealousy game and how to find peace and happiness in our lives by clearly and definitively realizing that jealousy is the path of suffering. And we don't have to go there. It is a choice. It's a choice we make all day long. Because if we play that game, no matter how much we succeed in life, we're ultimately always going to lose. There's always someone better looking than us, that has more than us, that is luckier than us. Always. And the sad thing about the jealousy game is we really don't look down very much. We far more look up. And there's just always someone above us. So a better path, a path of happiness and peace, is to not play the game, not participate in the world of jealousy, in the world of envy. Stop comparing. It is the path of suffering. Instead, let's live our lives well and focus on all the beautiful things that we have and stop comparing to others. But the question may be, how do we do that, Dr. Puff? I mean, after all, I've been involved in jealousy my entire life. I know it's never done me any good, but it's a habit in place. And it's a habit that's very challenging for me to break. So what do I do? So let's spend the remainder of this podcast on talking about how do we break the habits of jealousy and live lives that truly are exquisite because we're not comparing ourselves to anyone. The first thing we have to acknowledge is that jealousy is like a drug. It can feel good initially, particularly when we compare ourselves to people beneath us. But then we realize we also compare ourselves to people above us. And though we may feel good for a moment or two when we think we've done better than others, we realize quickly that can lead to, but other people have done better than us. So it's a circle that we just can't get out of. We just go round and round and round. We're better than them. We're less than them. I'm jealous of them. They're jealous of me. And this cycle goes on and on and on. And the only way to end it is to acknowledge, one, that it's bad. It's like taking heroin or crack. It can give a little thrill, but in the long run, it's really bad. And once we acknowledge that, then we can choose to stop playing the game, stop comparing ourselves to others, because it is a path of suffering. Let me use an example to explain why we can never beat it. There is a street in Southern California called Rodeo Drive. It's where all the nicest shops are. It's a beautiful street, and it has these amazing shops that have astronomical prices on some of their items. It's shocking how expensive the items are there. And a person like us may save a lot of money, go there and buy a really beautiful outfit with designer labels all over. But the second we leave the store and walk on Rodeo Drive, it will be blatantly obvious that other people have nicer things than we do. But let's say we work really hard and make a lot of money, and then we go to Rodeo Drive and we can buy the nicest things they have to offer there. But again, once we leave the store, we'll walk out on the street and we'll see so many beautiful people, a lot more beautiful or handsome than we are, and we'll feel less than. But let's say we are gorgeous and we work out and we get in great shape and we have great outfits. Then we get on the street and we realize there are people that have that too, and they're famous. I mean, people know who they are. We're nobody. We may have really nice clothes. We may be very attractive, but that person's a movie star, and we're not a movie star. And let's go one level higher. Let's say we are a movie star, and we just spent $100,000 on an outfit, and we are incredibly attractive. And we walk out of the store, and we run into another movie star who's won an Academy Award. Well, we haven't won one of those, and people like that person a lot more than they like us. They're more famous than we are. Do you begin to see how this path of jealousy never ends? It's like a drug that we just can't get enough of. So instead, how about we decide that the path of jealousy, the comparison game, is something we just don't want to participate in, because it is the path of suffering. But there is one last thing that I've learned over the years that our minds hang on to, that we think we can beat the game of jealousy, is that when we reach certain levels, we won't do that anymore. We'll be different. But the truth is, the only way to be different is by not playing the game. If we think we're going to reach a certain level and we're going to be so successful, so beautiful, have so much, that we won't care anymore, we are mistaken. That isn't how it works. It doesn't matter what we succeed or don't succeed in life. What matters is not comparing ourselves to others. Because if we do, that is the path of suffering. And if you don't believe me, just talk to someone who has a lot more than you do and see if all the things that they have, they're prettier, they have more money, they're more successful in their careers, if that is causing them bliss and happiness. It doesn't have to cause them unhappiness, of course, but it won't make them happy knowing that they're better than other people. It just doesn't. Because remember, they're always going to look up, and there's always someone above us. So the best way is just to say, hey, that comparison game, that jealousy game, I'm going to stop it. because I can't beat it. And then we can work towards living our lives well. But we really, really, really have to acknowledge that it isn't good for our soul. So then we say, okay, where am I feeding this drug? And to be honest, a lot of times these days it's through social media. Because we get on our sites, we see what other people are doing, and we feel jealous. And that jealousy, again, is the path of suffering. So we have a couple options. We can perhaps take a break from social media for a while, and then during that break, really realize that comparing ourselves to others is the path of suffering, and we don't want to suffer anymore. So what we do instead, we just focus on our lives and how they're going. How can we improve our lives? How can we make our lives better? And realizing that suffering comes from jealousy. And we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to focus on what we have and celebrating all the gifts that life has given us. And when we see others that may have things different than us, we're just thankful for what they have. We're thankful for what we have. And life becomes a beautiful adventure. And then, when we feel like we can do it, then perhaps we can get back on social media and focus on just celebrating other people's lives and realizing and acknowledging that if we compare and contrast our lives to their lives, that's the path of suffering. So we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to be excited for the things that they're about, the new babies, the new homes, whatever it may be. And we're excited for our life, the new book we're reading, the new podcast we discovered, the new fill in the blank. We live our lives well when that's our focus, living our lives well. And if you've been listening to this podcast for very long, you know we do that best when we take one day at a time, focusing in on making this a good day for us. It can be taking a walk in nature. It can be having dinner with a friend. It can be spending a night reading a book by the fire. There's so many ways that we can make our lives good today. And when we don't compare ourselves to others, then we do so much better in life. And when we acknowledge that jealousy is like a drug that may give us a thrill at first, but in the long run creates so much suffering. When we notice that we're going down the path of comparing and getting jealous, we'll say, it's time to stop that. It's time to do something else. Our minds can only be on one thing at a time. So we focus on what's before us. If we're eating our meal, we eat our meal. If we're going for a walk, we're going for a walk. If we're at work, we're just at work. And when we see that thing that can cause us jealousy, we can just be thankful for what they have, seeing it as a beautiful item, a beautiful thing. And then we can get back to living our lives well, because then we'll find that our lives will be well, whether we live in a mansion in Beverly Hills right next to Rodeo Drive, or whether we live somewhere that is much more modest and have nothing of designer label and aren't the most attractive person in the room and aren't doing a lot better than our relatives, but we're living our lives well. And we realize that is the path of happiness, not the one where we compare ourselves to others. We really have to acknowledge that jealousy is like a drug, and we don't want to take that drug anymore. We want to soak up life, the life that's given us right now. And no matter what life gives us, there's just always something to celebrate. And when we focus on that, then we have a good life. And stringing a lot of good days together, when we finally take our last breath, we will say, I lived well. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. If you are finding these episodes helpful, I would love for you to share your experience with others. The easiest way for new people to listen to this podcast is just refer them to www.happinesspodcast.org. That's happinesspodcast.org. Or if you want to do more and leave a review, on that site you'll find a Yelp link, a Google Plus link, a testimonial link, or perhaps even the site you're listening to this podcast on. Often you can leave reviews there too. The reviews are an awesome way to encourage people to start listening to the Happiness Podcast. And until next time, accept what is, love what is. Do you ever wonder why some companies do so well, grow, and just seem to keep coming up with great ideas and keep expanding, while other companies are permeated with negativity, lawsuits, employee turnover, and just overall unhappiness in the workplace? Whichever corporate camp you find yourself in, or somewhere in between, the key to any company's ongoing success is to invest in and help their employees perform at their peak performance. There are very clear and specific things that people can do to perform well at work and in life in general. This is the focus of my podcast, and it's also the focus of my work. Being at the cutting edge of any market is sustained through investment in training employees how to perform well. But sustained growth and productivity requires specific psychological tools in order to continue to perform at peak levels. This is where I can help. I've been studying peak performance for over 30 years now, helping people all over the world. And there are very specific things that have to be maintained in order to sustain this level of performance. When companies invest in their employees are invested in them. Unfortunately, it's quite common for companies to be doing exceptionally well in the marketplace, but for unknown reasons, key employees make poor choices, leave the company, or start struggling in coping with stress-related illnesses. Companies that do well know their business really well, but human behavior works in mysterious ways unless you've been trained to understand the causes and cures of underperformance. If you're a forward-thinking company, perhaps it's time to think about giving your employees skills that may really help them perform well at work and throughout their lives. If you work for or manage a company, and you're ready to learn the skills in order to survive and thrive in any market, in any conditions, or in life in general, I'd love to help. These are the skills I've learned. These are the ones I'd love to bring to your company. True lasting success has to be seen from a broader perspective, not just monetary. And if you're ready to bring about these changes, that's where I can help. To learn more, go to www.successbeyondyourimaginationcom. That's successbeyondyourimaginationcom. And whether we're at the doorstep of retirement or have many years to go, may we always be growing and be developing our skills not only as successful employees, but as successful human beings.